Hi, in this class you'll be learning how to draft your basic skirt block. These tools are what you need to draft the basic skirt block. You need your set square, hip curve, short ruler, pencil, eraser and sharpener, scissors, calculator, long ruler, measuring tape, tracing wheel to trace out the skirt. Varying curve is to establish a pencil skirt shaping. And the last thing you need is your pattern paper. I prefer the white pattern paper. It's a diameter of 24 by 36. These are what you need to draft the basic skirt sloper. Now let's take the measurements for the skirt. You would need 3 measurements to draft the basic skirt block. The 3 measurements you need are your waist circumference, hip circumference, and the skirt length. The skirt length is taken right to the knee. You stop the measurements on the knee point. The first one, which is the waist circumference, is taken around the waist. You take it as an actual measurement, not too tight and not too loose. That's the waist circumference. The second measurement you will be taking is the hip measurement. The hip circumference is taken around the fullest part of the bum, which is the fullest part on the lower part of the body. The fullest part of the lower torso of the body. That is where you take the hip measurement. Can you see this? You take it round as an actual measurement, not too tight and also not too loose. The last measurement you'll be taking is the skirt length. The skirt length is taken by the side. It's taken from the waist and stops on the knee. Just take it as that. From the waist and you stop on the knee by the side. You take it from this, like this, all the way to your knee. You stop right where you have the knee on the client's body. These 3 measurements are what you need to draft the basic skirt sloper. Now let's go draft our skirt. To start drafting your basic skirt sloper or block, measure 3 cm away from the edge of the paper. Connect together with your ruler. That's the horizontal line. Measure another 3 cm away from the edge of the paper. Just 2 points. Connect together with your ruler. That's the vertical line. Where both lines meet, that's your point 0. So label it 0. Where both lines intersect, that's point 0. So let's start. 0 to 1 is the skirt length. 0 to 1 is the skirt length. Indicates point 1 there. Square out with your set square. Square out with the set square. Place your set square on the already existing straight line to square it out. Zero to 2, that's the hip measurement divided by 2. You can use your tape rule or your long ruler to measure. Hip measurement divided by 2. Mark it, that's your point 2. Square it down. Square down with your set square. Where line 2 and line 1 intersect, that would be your point 3. Where line 1 and 2 meet is labeled as point 3. 0 to 4 and 2 to 5. Your point is 0 to point 2 and point 1 to 3 will be divided into 2. So you mark it, that's your point 4. And you mark it down also. That's your point 5. Connect together with your ruler. Zero to 6 and 2 to 7, we want to establish the hip area. That's your hip measurement divided by 4 minus 2 cm. Hip measurement divided by 4 minus 2 cm. You measure down from point 0, and that's indicated as 0.6. You measure down from point 2, and that's indicated as 0.7. Connect together with your ruler. Zero to 8 and 2 to 9 is the midway between point 0 to 6 and 2 to 7. That is the upper hip line. The first one we got was the hip line. This next one is the upper hip line. That's indicated as 0.9. You connect them together with the ruler. Now we want to calculate for waist suppression. To calculate the waist suppression, we want to know how much to take out to do the side seam shaping and the waist dart. So the first thing is you take note of your hip measurement divided by 2. You do that calculation, you write it down. Your waist measurement divided by 2, you do that calculation too, you write it down. You subtract the calculations from each other, which is your waist from the hip. Whatever you get, that's the total excess that will be taken out, which is our total suppression. You can use this ratio to determine your suppression. That suppression takes 55%, while side seam suppression takes 45%. So you can use this ratio, this formula, to do the calculation for the suppression shearing. Afterwards, the dart suppression will now be sheared for front dart and for back dart. After using this suppression ratio, the dart suppression will now be sheared for front dart and for back dart. Now the idea is this: the back dart is usually 1 cm wider than the front dart, and because of the hips, that is why, because of the bum at the back. Because of the bum at the back dart is usually 1 cm wider than the front dart. So use this guide to also determine your waist calculation suppression. Four to 10 and 4 to 11 have side seam suppression calculation, which means your side seam suppression will be divided into two. Half will be shared to the right and half to the left. Then you take your hip curve to blend together with the hip curve. You can see the way I blended mine. When you're blending it, let the curve go past the point 11 and the point 10. Let the line go past point 11 and point 10. You blend right before the hip line. That's where it stops at with the hip curve. Now 10 to 12 and 11 to 13 is just 1.5 cm up. The waistline is not straight, it has a slight curve going on, so that is why we are measuring it upwards to establish the new waistline, or should we call it the true waistline. 0 to 14 is 1 cm. The back skirt is usually longer than the front skirt, just with a little bit difference. So you connect point 12 to point 14, then you connect point 13 back to point 2, now we want to create the dart. First, you locate the midway between point 14 and point 12. That midway is labeled as point 15.
Then you locate the midway between point 2 and point 13. That midway also is labeled as point 16. We are creating the dart. Now for the back dart, point 15 to 17 and point 15 to 18, you'd share the back dart suppression on both sides. You square down point 15 and it stops at 3 cm below the upper hip line. That is where the dart length would stop at. So you measure with your short ruler or anything, 3 cm below the upper hip line. That is where the back dart length stops at. Connect them back to point 17 and 18. Where the back dart stops at, that's point 19. So you connect them back to point 17 and 18. Now let's do the front dart. 16 to 20 and 16 to 21. This is half front dart suppression shared on both sides. So the front dart suppression in half on both sides. That's for 20 and 21. You mark that. Now you square down point 16 and it stops at 2 cm above the upper hip line. Remember the back was 3 cm below, but the front is 2 cm above the upper hip line. You can use your short ruler to measure that. 2 cm above the upper hip line. You label that 22. Then you connect it back to point 20 and point 21. That's the end of the draft of the basic skirt sloper. So we're just going to label it now. The left hand side is your back as usual. The right hand side is your front. Then the midway is your side seam. That's the hip line level. And that's the upper hip line. For easy identification, you just label again. That's the back and that's the front. That's the end of the draft of the basic skirt sloper or block. You can cut out your skirt pattern to have it completed. Remember to add your sewing allowance before you transfer to the fabric, or you add your sewing allowance on the fabric.